thank you so much for joining us today here on the Rise Up For You podcast, Workplace Solutions. It's an honor to have you here as our guest.
Thank you. Good morning.
Morning. Okay, so we always like to start off the podcast by getting to know our guests a little bit better. And I will put a disclaimer in, you guys, that Walid is actually my older brother, but he does some incredible work in the corporate space and as an entrepreneur. So after 4 years of asking, we finally got him on the show. So Walid, please, in your own words, tell us a little bit about the great work that you're doing, what you've done in the past and what you're currently doing.
Yeah, so background is finance and economics, but my day job is I work as an operations specialist, entrepreneur, and advisor. I work for large and mid-sized companies, managing kind of the front end of the supply chain, demand planning, business intelligence, operations strategies. Then I sit on the board of a handful of companies. I do some private advising, have some small investments and some small startups, and then a few passion projects that I do for fun.
Okay, so what I really think is amazing about everything that you just told us, and that's part of the reason why I'm happy that you're coming on now, is that you're very versatile. So you have a diverse portfolio in the work that you're doing. And I think that up until now, there was a lot of differing views about it, right? You know, some professionals stick to one, build your career in one area in your industry. And then you have other professionals like Gary Vee and individuals like yourself that play in a number of different areas. And now, as you know, we've hit this pandemic where now more than ever, we have to be diverse. And so you have a diverse portfolio in the sense that not only have you worked in the corporate space and you still work in the corporate space, but you're also an entrepreneur and you have a number of different investments. So, we thought that we were going to be disrupted by AI, and little did we know that beforehand a pandemic was going to happen. So, can you talk to us about having an entrepreneurial mindset in the corporate space? Because I think that's some of the challenges that we're seeing today is more in the corporate world. How do we pivot and make an adjustment and have that entrepreneur mindset of creating and building?
Yeah. What's funny is I actually just found out that there's a term for people like me called intrapreneur, where you act and think like an entrepreneur, but you're in a corporate setting. I actually didn't know that existed.
Yeah.
But to me, like even most entrepreneurs aren't really entrepreneurs. To me, entrepreneurs it's a mindset, it's a philosophy. And so, in the corporate world, being an entrepreneur can be a blessing and a curse. It really depends on the environment. But if I were to kind of like break it down, like what that means, at least for your group, is one, like most people in the corporate world, they follow the structure that's given to them. An entrepreneur goes the opposite way. They're like, this is the stuff that needs to get done, and I'm going to create a structure to get it done. So I would say it's really just a handful of philosophical beliefs, which one is in the corporate world, you're hired for your craft. Whatever you're doing, that's what you're hired for, marketing person, finance guy. So you want to be a master of your craft, and you want to take ownership. One of my reputations is that I don't turn out work and I don't put my name on anything that's not quality work. I don't care if it's going to another department, my intern, a leadership person. Like I don't put out anything that I don't want to put my name on. And so being a master of your craft, taking ownership of your work, being a decision maker and a problem solver, that's something that should be in the entrepreneur's blood. In the corporate world, sometimes there's a lot of red tape and bureaucracy, but you kind of just got to push through it, make decisions, solve problems. You got to act like that's your business you're running, even though it's just a job. Another thing I would say is communicate effectively. When you're in the corporate world, you have to be able to speak up, down, across, right? You got to talk to the leadership team. You have to speak to your employees. You have to speak to the other departments, clients, vendors. Like you need to be able to communicate at every single level. And then again, most people don't think that they need to do this in a corporate environment, but be a leader. Like even the people who aren't your employees, again, act like it's your business, be an example, offer help where you can, and make people's jobs easier. Like if I were to put it in one phrase, I would say you are more than your job function. And so that's really the difference between the mentality of a corporate person and an entrepreneur, which is if I know Excel and I teach you Excel, if that puts my job at risk, I'm not really good at my job. So an entrepreneur should understand like you need to be a master at your craft, but you also have to have all these other things. And you need to take ownership, run it like it's your business. And that's really the difference between a corporate employee and an entrepreneur. And again, there's some corporate worlds that appreciate that. And there's sort of corporate worlds where it's like, this isn't the place for that. And I found that because I've been in large companies, small companies. It really is a relationship thing where it's like that philosophy, that mentality mixed with the right corporate environment, and it's game over.
Yeah, no, I love that you added that last fact in though, that some companies have fostered that mindset, that entrepreneur, and some don't. And I think that you're right in saying that, if you have an entrepreneur mindset in the corporate world, then you have to figure out which corporations accept that. It's funny because while you were talking, I was thinking about a number of different clients that we work with. And as you know, we work with companies and individuals. And one of the things that we hear from companies is that they wish their employees had more buy-in. So that they did run it like it was their company. They did run it, as if they built it from the ground up and they had ideas and they brought it to the table. And then on the flip side, we see the individuals that say, oh, well, I wish I could just create something from scratch and be more creative. And they have this misconception that they have to leave the corporate environment and go build something from scratch on their own, which isn't necessarily the case. And so I like the fact that we're having this conversation about entrepreneurship, meaning that you can build something and create something and foster something and make it feel like it's your own without building a company from scratch, which can be very scary for many people. So I think
I think that's the biggest disservice that a lot of these like YouTube mentor, public speaker, whatever you want to call them. I think this notion that people have to go out and build their own business and work for themselves to be happy is bullshit. There's a lot of good companies out there where you could find a space and be happy and have your job. I'm a person that, even though I'm built like an entrepreneur, it's in our blood. For personal reasons, I've decided I never really want to solely work for myself. Right? I want to have a baseline business, a company, a team, a business where like I'm just supporting them and I could, no strings attached, I can go lay my head on the pillow and sleep at night. And then I'll have my stuff on the side that I like to do and gamble with. But yeah, this notion where you have to work for yourself to be happy it's misguided.
I totally agree with you. And I was actually just having this conversation on one of my live streams because the last 2 years we've talked about this word purpose, right? Which is, I don't have purpose in my work. And so people are leaving to go find purpose. And even today I get resumes for Rise Up For You because they want to work with us. And the resumes that I see today are 7 months, 8 months, 9 months, because they want purpose, where it's not really about purpose, but it's about having meaning behind what you're doing. And sometimes you're going to work in a job where you don't feel like you have meaning, but you always have purpose. Otherwise you wouldn't be there, even if purpose is typing in numbers into an Excel sheet. And so, I agree with you in that sense that I think the messaging in the past couple of years with some of the influencers has really deterred working professionals into a direction that might not be the best for them. So I know you spend a lot of time, in operations, and I can personally say, just from watching you grow and your experience and the demand from different companies that ask for you, you're great at operations. Tell us more about that. There's a lot of companies obviously right now that are struggling with operations because of where we are in the world. So what's the most common problem that you see with companies? And I always talk about being in preventative mode, but what's the most common problem that you see, and where do you think the mistake is made?
So as an operations guy, I would always lean toward like vision, strategy, process, the more technical stuff. But obviously I know Rise Up For You is more about like personal development. So I'll kind of like translate it into that thread. I think the thing to understand is that people think that like companies are like these giant godlike machines and they like have all these amazing systems and that they're, if they make $1 million and they're international, that means something. It actually means nothing. Like a lot of these companies, at the end of the day, it's just people, and it's just average people running these companies. They're no different than people running smaller companies. It's the same exact thing. It's just larger. And so I think the mistakes that companies make are really the same things that people make, which is, one, they don't really know themselves or what they really want. And because they haven't defined who they are or what they want, they just kind of like go by what people tell them they're supposed to have. Right? There's kind of like this ABCs of life, and there's kind of like these ABCs of business. And so people just basically do whatever they're supposed to do, whatever they're told to do, or worse, even like what the status quo is. And like even people who think they're innovative in business is just doing what the last person who said they were innovative did. Right? It's like Google does something and now everybody else does something and they think they're innovative, but no, they're just doing what they saw Google did. right? It's like if you hire, I mean, you can literally say head of blank position, like director of whatever position, and you hire them in a company, and they're really going to do one of two things. They're either going to do what they've always done, or they're going to do whatever the latest trend in the sector is. And so literally, like, there is no real innovation. It's just like a copycat world. People are doing the same thing everybody else is doing. No one's really taking the time to step back and saying, does this fit us? Is this what we want to do? One of the exercises I like to have my clients go through is I like to have take their business and overlay it onto a business model that isn't their business. So if like I have a client right now who's a graphic designer, and I'm like, well, let's see what your business looks like if we overlaid it for like a family doctor practice. Like, what is the family office for a doctor? What does that business model look like? And if we applied your profession to this business model, what would it look like? And creating different scenarios and seeing which model and which strategies actually work instead of just doing what the last person did. And the problem is that every strategy has good and bad things. So people do something, right? They do what they've always done and they're comfortable with. And there's some things that work. So they're like, why should we change? I know this is going to work. And it's not, you try the new thing. It's like, yeah, a few of these things work. You amp up the things that work and you deny the things that don't. You kind of kick them down the road, which is, so I mean, if number one is you don't know who you are and what you want. Number two is, for most businesses and for most people, they're just afraid of change. Like, people are really afraid of change. And that's probably the biggest thing I've noticed in my career is like, you go in and you can even try and make a small thing, like, we're just going to change this document a little, and you'll get pushback because people are afraid to like make any kind of change to anything. Even if they know the outcome is going to be better for themselves and the company, they're just not into it.
So why do you think that is? Because, you know, obviously, you know, what our clients are, or corporations as well as individuals, as I mentioned, and we see most of the pushback obviously from companies, right? So it's this idea of changing from investing into maybe like marketing and sales and branding and strategy, which are still important, but the concept of now shifting and investing into like people development and soft skills training is still something that they're getting used to or even wanting to adjust to. You know, there's still this conception or this thought that investment dollars need to go into directly making money, where it could benefit them greatly and even make more money if they invest in these skills for their people. And so why do you think that is that change is hard? Do you think they just get comfortable? Is it too much of a risk for them?
I mean, honestly, it's all the above. Like, change is not an easy thing. It's a necessary thing. And, you know, sometimes, again, if especially when times are good, like if you would have asked 6 months ago, any company, like any traditional company, if you would have been like, hey, do you think you could have a more online presence, do virtual meetings, have most of your staff work from home, do digital investments to improve efficiencies and productivity? Do you think you could do that? Like, would that benefit your business? No one would have said no. But what they would have said is, but it's not really the right time for that. Things are good right now. Maybe at some point we'll cross that bridge when we get to it in the future. Like, so it's not really a function of like not understanding that it's needed. It's a function of like, we don't really need it now. It's not a priority right now. Let's focus on some other stuff and we'll get to that when we get to it. Which, I mean, is just, I mean, that's just human nature, right? Procrastination. It's like, you know, you need to read the book, or you know, you need to do your homework or whatever it is, but you push it out until the last minute or it's too late. And the truth is, like, companies are like boxers in the sense that like what you gain in size and power, you lose in speed and agility. So for a large company to change, like even just to do a Windows upgrade is going to be like, you know, a month-long project at $1 million. Like, it's not, when you're the bigger companies, it's hard for them to change it. It's scary. And you have like investors and, you know, you're a public company on the stock market. Like, even the smallest changes is hard. But the truth is, like, that counterbalance of like big companies being stuck like that is what makes this time of being an entrepreneur and having all these resources available to invest in yourself and your company. Like, that's what makes it an amazing time, because a small boutique firm who invests in its companies or invests in its employees, like, they can compete. Like, a one-man show can compete with a corporation now. A one-man show with technology and branding could service clients in like China or Africa or the Middle East. Like, it's no longer just like a local community. And with technology, everything is scalable. Barriers of entries have been knocked down. Like, a person, I know a lot of guys who are running very successful firms, they all started out big companies. And they're like, screw this, I can do it on my own for half the price and make more money. Why not?
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head when you talked about, and I talk about it a lot, is the preventative mode, is that we wait until it's too late. And I think that this is really a shift that has to happen mentally across the board, companies and individuals. And I think that you just said it beautifully, is that you don't change until you need to, not to say that you don't need it, but unless it's like staring you in the face and something's on fire, there's no need or there's no urgency to do it. But I really love this conversation, not because you're my older brother, but because I think you're the first guest that we've had on the show that's really bringing light to both the entrepreneur and the corporate side of things. And, you know, there's times where we get someone that's strictly on the corporate side of things, and we get individuals that are strictly entrepreneur, and obviously they have opposing views on one another. But this is really great to have a 360 view on both corporate and entrepreneurship, how they can work together. What are some of the differences and challenges? So I'm really enjoying this conversation. We can talk for hours more, because I really want to talk about also how you build relationships, which is a pivot. But I mean, you are like an expert in networking, building relationships and getting your face out there and building a community. And I want to dive into that. I think we should take a pause and do a part 2, because this is so much great information that we just talked about, and I want people to process it and take it in. So what I'd love to do is jump into our golden section of the interview. And then I do want you to come back and do a part 2 where we talk about, you know, business networking, getting your name out there, how to build a community, and really build those professional relationships and how to leverage them. So I'd love to ask you some quick random questions, just a couple words. It's like our fire series. So what's something today, and we've been talking about it, but what's something today that you would like to see different in the workforce?
Really, I mean, it's the lasting problem everywhere, which is just ownership and communication. I mean, the number of times I've been in a company and I've seen, it's always one of two things. It's either you have people who aren't taking ownership, and you know, this guy thinks this guy's doing the project, and this guy thinks this guy's working on the project, and this guy thinks this person's working. Everybody thinks someone else is working on something, and it turns out no one was working on it because everybody else thought someone else was working on it. Like it's either that, or it's no one's communicating, and you have 3 people doing the exact same project, and no one knows that all 3 people are wasting their time because that guy's doing it, that guy's doing it, and that guy's doing it, which is just a waste of resources. So it's always that one. It's really a combination of like the owning something, taking it, but then communicating out so that people understand that you're the owner, you're taking care of it. So you don't have 5 people working on the same project or nobody working on the project.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you know, I always ask for the golden nugget. So if you can leave the world with one golden nugget, what would that be?
I mean, it's kind of what I touched on before, which is like, don't make life more complicated than it needs to be. Just figure out who you are, what you want, and then go do it, and do it the right way. No shortcuts, no excuses. You put in the work, you build yourself up, you be a better person, and you be nice to people and have fun.
Yeah, it just reminded me when I first started building Rise Up For You, the shortcuts, when I used to like tell you something that I was doing or give you an idea and you'd be like, Netta, don't take a shortcut, just freaking do it. And lastly, as you know, we're Rise Up For You, and I always like to end the episode with asking, what does Rise Up For You mean to you?
I mean, obviously I have a personal connection because you're my sister. I mean, I guess just philosophically it means like you owe it to yourself to be the best version of you. And then by being a better version of you, you inspire other people to be a better version of them. And it just kind of ripples.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that answer. Walid, thank you so much for joining us. We're going to bring Walid back for part 2. So if you enjoyed this episode, please share it, send it to your friends, your family, your coworkers, and then meet us back for the second episode, part 2 with Walid Nasserdeen, because we're going to be talking about building professional relationships, leveraging your business, networking, and how to really get yourself out there and build a positive community, which he has done over the years in an incredible fashion. So, and if you haven't connected with Walid already, tell us a little bit more about how we can connect. Is there a LinkedIn page that we can go to, or?
Yeah, I mean, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, all 3.
Awesome. And we'll put Walid's Instagram, Walid's LinkedIn link in the post below so that you can reach out to him. Thanks again, Walid. We'll see you on part 2. All right, we took a little break and now we are back with Walid Nasserdeen, part 2. We had such a great conversation on part 1 that I decided to keep rolling, but we wanted to take a pause. But for those of you that are just joining, I'd love Walid to, again, tell us a little bit about yourself for part 2, for those that haven't heard part 1 yet. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what it is that you do.
Yeah, so operations specialist, entrepreneur, do some business advising, mainly on the front end of the supply chain. So we're like the sales and finance meets manufacturing. Then I have a bunch of passion projects, sit on a bunch of company boards, and have few investments. So
Great. So definitely, if you didn't listen to part 1 with the episode of Walid on workplace solutions, check it out, because there's a lot of really great information in there about entrepreneurship, the corporate world, entrepreneurship, how to merge, the different challenges that are happening today. But I wanted to do a part 2 because Walid is notorious and brilliant with networking and building connections in community. And I remember that when I built Rise Up For You 4 years ago, and I didn't know I literally built it from the ground up because I was completely changing industries and I didn't know anybody in this world. Walid was really the one that was giving me these tips and advice and showing me how to build this network. And so today, because of everything that's happening with the pandemic, building connections and networking and building a community is very, very important. And I think that professionals before today, a lot of us can get away with living in our own box, and we can't right now. We need to be able to get out there, get our brand out there, get exposure, and really help our profession and leverage those relationships. So let's talk about building relationships. You're a master networker. You definitely have it right. I've seen it. What's your philosophy? Let's just start there.
Yeah. So I would start off by saying I would never call myself a networker, let alone a master networker. Like, I actually don't like the term. My philosophy is simple. I love meeting people and I value relationships. And really that's what it comes down to. Now, I've been blessed and I've met some really cool people and amazing people and have had some amazing relationships, but I would actually count that on less on what I'm doing right and more what other people are doing wrong, right? Because a lot of people look in networking and they have the business card and they do all that kind of stuff. I don't go into a relationship with an agenda or an expectation. I genuinely don't care what most people do for a living. I don't care if they're famous. I don't care how much money they make. I genuinely don't really care about a person at that level. It's more like, I don't even care if they get help me, to be honest. I actually just want to know people for who they are, what the character is, a deeper level. I want to know people at that level. And I've always said, I'm not really a people person. I'm a person. I enjoy the one-on-one small group dynamic, getting to know what makes a person tick, what they're passionate about. And that's really it. And because of that, and then you combine that with actually value relationships, it doesn't matter if it's social, professional, romantic, you could be in my life for 10 minutes or 10 years. I'm going to appreciate everybody that comes into my life, and I'm going to try and give them value. I'm going to try and leave them a little better than I found them. I'm going to get whatever I can as far as whatever energy or whatever they're trying to give. If I were to say there was one kind of tip or tool that I use, and it's not even a conscious thing, I didn't recognize it until I was thinking about this, which is I have a good balance of being open and organic, and then methodical and critical on how I let people into my life. I'm not a big social guy. I don't have a lot of friends. I keep it very tight. But what I do is I take the mindset of a data mining, data and analytics, whereas I cast a very large net. And then I understand that most people in that net, I'm not going to vibe with. We're not going to have a lasting relationship. There's not going to be a connection. But I bring everybody in, and then I create very easy filtration systems for people to filter themselves out. So it starts wide, and then it kind of drills down, filters. And then at the end, you have a core ring of friends. And then you have this core, and then you have a ring of friends and a ring of associates. And there's a different value to all of them, and you appreciate all of them. That's really the trick, is you just open a wide net, create a filtration system so that you're true to yourself and you're not bringing the wrong people into your life. But be open, provide value if you can, expect nothing, be kind, and then just do your own thing. And I'm kind of woo-woo about it, where it's I think the people that are meant to be around me will be around me, and the people that aren't won't.
So there's two things that, there's two things that you said that I want to touch on. Okay, the first one is give value, which we're going to come back to. Okay, and the second one, I don't remember now. So let's talk about yeah. Let's talk about give value until it comes back to me, because that actually leads me into a question that I wanted to talk about. Is there's a lot of takers out there, okay, and there's a lot of people that I've seen and professionals that I've worked with where they just they want right away, they want. And I remember, again, when I was first building Rise Up For You, you constantly like add value, like, Netta, you're an educator. You started as an educator, educate, just add value. And that's one of the best tips I've ever gotten, because now that's what I do. And then organically things will come back at me. So can you speak to that a little bit more? Because I think that this idea of just adding value and like really establishing yourself as a giver and an expert is probably one of the best strategies you can implement, especially as someone that runs your own business.
Yeah, I mean, part of it's conditioning, right? Like, I mean, obviously we're siblings. Like, I'm the oldest Middle Eastern kid, male, time of war. Father was a lot stricter on us. Like, I'm bred to be the protector, the provider, the ones who take care of people, make sure everyone's safe and attended to. And like, you have the same kind of characteristics, but you've always been in a community, right? You've always been like the cheerleader, and like you've always had a group around you. I've always been like kind of a siloed person, like on my own. And so it plays itself a little differently, but like, we were raised in a time like where our father, even in the tough times, was like sending money over to his family in the Middle East. Like, even when we didn't have it, we were still giving and providing. And so part of it is just ingrained in the way we were raised. And then the other part of it is just a philosophy. Like, I'm basically a street kid who found out what he wanted to do for a living and is having fun with it. And like, regardless of like how hard the story was to get there, like, I'm blessed. And like, what kind of man wouldn't give back if he's in this kind of situation and he could? And I'd actually take a step back and say, it's not even about giving. Like, it's more about, like, I don't want people to think like you have to be successful to give. Like, it could just be as simple as like supporting people, lifting them up, helping them do whatever they want to do. Like, just being friendly to someone. It's a cliche, but it's like someone's like, you smile at someone and now their day's improved and now they go do better. Like, it's cheesy, but it's true. Like, it's a ripple effect for everything. And like, I'm good at my job because I love building things and adding value, but that doesn't stop at businesses. Like, that goes for people too. Like, teach a man to fish because everyone loves sushi. Like, that's kind of my idea.
No, and I love that. And as you were talking, I remembered my first question, which goes into this, is this idea of expectation and what it's supposed to be, right? And when you say like you just walk into a room and you just give and you show up that way, then things happen for you. And what we see a lot, and I'm sure you see this too, and I think this is why people don't enjoy networking, is because when you go to an event, people walk in with this whole list of what it should be and expectations and what they need to have by the time they leave. And so then that adds stress, it adds anxiety, it adds pressure, but it also is a conversation killer, because I cannot tell you how many conversations I have where I'm like, hey, what's your name? Hi, I'm Bob. What do you do for a living? And it's like, oh man, I don't want to talk anymore. You know what I mean? It's like, let's get there. But I mean, I agree with you. It's like getting to know the individual and the person, and then learning about the great work that they're doing. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And it's hard because, again, like, people, and it could come from different it might be because I don't sell anything, right? Like, I do advising, but my clients are referrals. I have a corporate job. Like, I'm not going into a room selling real estate or insurance or a package. Like, so maybe that's one part of it, which is like, I actually have nothing to sell. I don't really need anything from anybody. But the other part of it is like, and this is a really bad metaphor, but remember the Tokyo Drift movie where like, there's this movie and the guy, he has a bunch of cars. He's a rich guy, has a bunch of cars. He gives this car to some guy to test drive, and the guy can't drive and trashes the car. And the guy's like, why would you let me trash your car? And he's like, I'd rather one car is worth finding out what a man's really made out of. And it kind of goes like that. It's like, if I'm there to network and I'm there to do business with somebody, I don't want to do business with anybody or be in a relationship with anybody unless I know them, like really know them. So I'd rather, instead of trying to get business from someone and then find out who they are, I'd rather find out who they are and then decide if I want to do business with them. And so it's just that philosophy. Like, I don't want to bring people in my life that are, and there's no bad people. I don't believe in that kind of stuff, but it's just like, there's what you're trying to do and what your personality is and what the environment you're trying to create. Like, people like to spout out, like, you're the 5 people you surround yourself with, whether it comes financially, health-wise, blah, blah, blah. So, I mean, if that's true, then you better be careful who you surround yourself with. Now, that doesn't mean cut people off. That I get tired when I see people post like, oh, if you're not giving me value, I don't need you in my life. Like, that's bullshit. But at the same time, like, you want to have both worlds. You want to be open, but then critical of who you actually keep close to you. And I mean, that's building an empire, right? People like to use that term, like, I'm building an empire. Well, part of the empire is you have your close friends, you have your right-hand man, you have your close community, and then you have the greater world, and you're still providing value to everybody. It's not like, these are the people I take care of and these are the people I don't. It's like, if I'm blessed and I'm able, I'm going to take care of everybody that I can who wants it and deserves it and is going to take it and then help themselves. Like, it's a strict philosophy, but it's what I believe.
And going to what you just said about being blessed and able, and you mentioned this earlier when we were talking, it really has nothing to do with the financial dollar. You know, like, you can be blessed and able now and still be building your business. And I mean, I've worked with companies that are just in the beginning of building something, and they're donating to nonprofits, or they're giving their time at nonprofits, because for them, you know, giving back is not correlated to the dollar. I mean, obviously you can't sink because of it, but there can be a balance of both. So
yeah, I mean, I one of my passion projects is a company called Charity Lives that I started back in like 2010. And I mean, we've been running almost 10 years, and I can say my total investment in the company has been less than $200, like, over 10 years. And we've been New York Fashion Week, major events in LA. We've probably fundraised more than $1 million. Like, and it's a complete barter system. So I just had lunch a month ago with, it was an autism group. Now she runs a different organization. But basically what happened is we would promote charity events. And then our niche was that, like, anybody that was promoting the charity event, we knew the board of directors of the event producers. So if you were like, hey, I can't buy tickets, or I want to buy tickets, but I also want to get involved at a deeper level, volunteering, donating, whatever it is, we could set it up. And so I just had lunch with her, and she was like, hey, that guy you connected with us at our first event, and he donated his cabin in Aspen. He's been doing it for 5 years, and just on his one item, we've raised $250,000 over the last 5 years, just from us connecting a guy who had a vacation home in Aspen. Like, it does, and that took nothing from us. Like, right, it was no money on us to build our thing, no money for the guy to donate his house, and now you got this charity that's making $250,000 to help autistic kids. It's a beautiful thing. And this goes back to the entrepreneurship thing, which is money is a resource, but it's not the only resource. So if you don't have that resource, be resourceful and find another way to make it happen.
Yeah, no, I love that. That's really, really good advice. So that is really good advice. And I didn't know that story about the $250,000. But one of the things that I see today as a professional and with Rise Up For You and working with our clients is a lack of career resilience. Now, a lot of times when we think of resilience, we think of it in, regards to trauma or our personal life. But I really believe that career resilience is also a thing. And I'm seeing with this new generation that it's not there, and so you've been through a lot in your life. I know that, in your career, personally and professionally, and you've always been resilient and you've still managed to stay on top and continuously grow. You definitely have a growth mindset. Wrapping up this episode, talk to us a little bit about career resilience, because I definitely think, especially during this time, this message of career resilience has to shoot out to the world.
I mean, honestly, I think it goes back to the first interview we did, which is know yourself and know what you want. If I was to dictate when I had problems and when I didn't, it was when I had the biggest problems is when I found myself. And ever since then, it's been high flying. Regardless of what company I'm with or whatever it is, if you know what you want to do and you're good at it, and you obviously part of being good at it is developing yourself, right? So you're like, this is who I am, this is what I want to do, this is what I want to be, this is what I stand for. Okay, now this is how I'm going to make my money. I'm going to be I'm going to be an analyst, or I'm going to be a speaker, or whatever it is. It doesn't matter what kind, like you're not identified by your company. So like when people are like, oh, I want a job at Google. It's like, why? Like, don't tell me you want a job at Google. Tell me you want to be the guy who creates a code that makes whatever, and you can do that at any company. Like the company doesn't define you. So with me, it's like when I found out what I wanted to do, it didn't really matter if I was sitting in my bedroom doing it or if I was sitting in a multi-million-dollar corporation doing it. It's like, I know what I want to do. I'm having fun doing it. I'm good at it. It brings value. So now I'm getting paid. People appreciate it. And that's it.
Yeah, I think that's great. Walid, thanks again for joining us. And for those of you that haven't listened to part 1 of this episode, you have to go back and listen to part 1 because it's amazing, a ton of value, very beneficial. Please share this with anyone you know, friends, family, coworkers, people that are in your professional network. I'd love to ask you, Walid, before we head out, is there anything that I didn't ask you or that we didn't talk about that you really want to say or get out there?
I'm single. No, just kidding. No, I don't think so.
Okay, and I know that I asked you this in the first episode, but I'm going to ask again because that's what we do. Is what is we're called Rise Up For You. What does Rise Up For You mean to you?
Yeah, like I said before, I mean, you owe it to yourself to be the best version of you. Like whatever it is you want to do, whatever it is you want to be the best at it. And that takes hard work, but you owe it to yourself. And then in turn, like it's a ripple effect. So kind of like how the networking thing, you being better for yourself makes other people want to be better for themselves, your wife, your kids, your family, your friends. And it's just a ripple effect. And it's a good way to spark change in the world, at least at a local level, if not more.
I love that. Thank you so much. So for those of you that want to connect with Walid Nasserdeen, we're going to pop his LinkedIn URL in the post below. Check him out, connect with him. An incredible, just human being in general, professionally and personally. So check out Walid. Walid, thank you again for joining us and we appreciate your time.
All right, thanks.